Well, one line of argument is to say, well, if you have these liberal institutions in place, the first great value as a consequence of that is that the amount of freedom that individuals in that society are able to enjoy increases. And so we have the green up arrow. As a result of that, right, people have the profit motive, right, as an incentive, because they are able to do what they want, they are able to keep the rewards of their efforts, and that incentivizes them to pursue profit. As a result of that, they're going to work harder, right, than they would under other institutional arrangements, and as a result of that, the amount of material wealth in that society is going to increase. Right? And this will be a comparative judgment on the incentive dimension, so to speak. Other systems will incentivize people or disincentivize them in various ways. Capitalism is going to produce more material wealth as a result of this one incentive line of argument. Okay, and we're familiar with that. Now, there's another line of argument that says if you have liberal institutions and people are very free, well, you've got a whole bunch of individuals, and individuals don't all know the same sorts of things. There's lots of different knowledge, and people have knowledge of their particular circumstances, their particular interests, right, and so forth. But what happens in a free society is people find ways to coordinate the knowledge that different individuals have. And what they do is they set up all sorts of win-win trade networks. Sometimes it's in a business context, sometimes it's in an educational context, sharing knowledge, sharing values. And so all of these people's different knowledges and expertises and specializations come to be coordinated, right, in a way that is better than, say, in a centralized society where the decisions are being made by a small number of people who might know a lot of stuff, but nonetheless they don't know nearly as much as all of the knowledge collectively held by people in a society. So as a result of this, right, the free markets or capitalist kinds of societies make better use of the knowledge that is available in a society, and as a result of that, the material wealth in that society increases. So particularly in recent generations, when the economists will talk about the most important kind of capital being human capital, and particularly the intellectual capital that we all have, how well a society does at tapping into and utilizing that knowledge is a fundamental determinant of how prosperous it's going to be. Now, there's another line of argument that says if we have individual freedom, what happens in those kinds of society is an increase in amount of individuality, because with freedom, people make different choices, they have different interests, they have different personalities, and so people put together different kinds of lifestyles, and so you have a much more diverse, right, kind of lifestyles, right, that people are living. And out of that comes a whole lot more creativity and innovation than you're going to get in a society where people are encouraged to be more or less the same, think the same thoughts, do the same things at the same time, right, and so forth. And it's out of this creativity and innovation, right, that you are going to have a more wealthy society. So what we have then is three lines of arguments here that say the virtues of capitalism, right, are that it incentivizes people to work hard, it enables people to work smart, and it enables people to work creatively, right? And those three jointly make capitalism a whole lot more effective at producing wealth compared to any other kind of society. All right, so we've heard these kinds of arguments, and they're fairly powerful. Now, the next kind of argument is to say, well, there's also the issue of not only that capitalism produces a lot of wealth, but we have to pay attention to who gets all of this wealth, right, that is created. And there's a line of argument that then says what happens in capitalist societies is they make everybody pretty much better off. Right? So everybody is better off living under capitalism than they would under various other systems. Or a close variation on that, if you're not quite as optimistic about the everyone, to say, well, at least it makes the majority, right, better off. Right? Not everybody is going to succeed. Right? Or it makes the common man better off using the common person in the middle as the representative of the society, so some variation on that. Or we can make the argument that it makes the poor people better off, either because they have more opportunities or because there's so much more wealth created that through various channels it makes its way to the poor. With all of the extra wealth in the society, there's going to be an increase in the amount of philanthropy in these societies compared to other societies, and as a result of that, the people who are the weakest of the weak are also going to be better off. Then there's an argument at the other end of the spectrum that what is a great virtue of capitalism is that the best people within a society, not necessarily the morally best, but the people who are the creative geniuses, the brilliant scientists, the people who need enormous amounts of resources and freedom in order to be able to do what they do, those kind of people are going to be better off under a capitalist system than various other systems. And so what these things all on the right side of the page have to do is distribution issues and justifying capitalism in terms of who gets the fruits that are produced. All right, now these are arguments all that are focused mostly on economic issues and money issues, and there's a whole other set of kinds of arguments that are not directly economic about the virtues of capitalism. One is that the important value is happiness, and if you're in a society where you're told what to do, or you have to do what everybody else is doing, you're not going to be as happy in that kind of society. That people, if they're going to be happy and flourish in their lives, we have to do our own thing, our own way, and so society that enables people to do that is going to be a society in which there are more happy people. And also, there's kind of an aesthetic argument that argues these societies are going to be more interesting societies because you're going to have people doing all of these different things. There's going to be lots of creativity and innovative stuff that's happening. And of course, you'll have eccentric people, but you're going to have a society that's a whole lot more diverse, and it's going to be more enjoyable to live in a society like that as opposed to a society where, again, there's a whole lot more uniformity, conformity, and the same thing happening over and over again. There's also going to be an argument about tolerance. If you think historically of the kinds of social pathologies that have plagued us, religious intolerance leading to social conflicts and war, ethnic intolerances, and so forth. If we have a society that says the important thing is the individual and respecting individuals for who they are and the judgments they make about their lives, then that is going to bring with it a tolerance for people who are significantly different from the way that we are. If your religion and my religion are matters primarily of our own individuality, then I will be more respectful of your prerogative to make your own different choices, as opposed to any system that says collectively we all have to be on the same page with respect to religious matters, and so, or that my salvation is contingent upon your also making the right choices, then we start to interfere with each other on religious matters and so on. So liberal capitalist societies, the argument goes, are going to be a lot more tolerant internally and so peaceful there. Another line of argument that says, if we just, one way of getting to it is to focus on this incentives issue, that other traditional social problems of racism, sexism, and so forth, automatically thinking of people of other races or the other gender as being less worthy, less deserving of social standing, equal rights, and so forth, that is going to go away for a variety of reasons. The most obvious argument is to say, well, those people are individuals too, and so we should respect them for who they are. But one line of argument that gets played up a lot in the economics literature is to say that the profit motive and the incentives that capitalism brings gives people an incentive to overlook racial differences and sexual differences. So just as one example, if I am hiring someone and I've got two candidates, to keep the example simple, and one is a male who graduated with a degree but was a C student, and the other candidate is a female and she graduated but she was an A student, but I'm just this dyed-in-the-wool old-school sexist and I would prefer not to work with women. But nonetheless, if I am profit motivated, I'm going to look at these two candidates and say, well, I might otherwise prefer to work with the male and to hire the male, but my realization that I'm going to make more money if I hire the woman because she is an A student and therefore likely to be smarter and a hard worker and to add more value, I'm going to be more likely to overlook my sexist attitudes and to deal with someone whom I not otherwise deal with. And the same thing will happen across racial issues. Suppose I'm trying to sell expensive equipment, but I'm a racist, and some person with brown skin comes into my shop and I don't like brown skinned people, I'm not as likely to say, no, I don't want your $100,000, you brown person, just go away, I'm more likely to say, right, okay, I have to deal with brown people, right, but I want to have your $100,000, so we'll do the deal. And then the ice is broken, and certain kinds of attitudes start to decrease, right, over time. So the argument then is that it institutionalizes incentives that will lessen the friction, right, between various kinds of groups and so on. It's also an argument that can be seen as a variation on that. If you look internationally, liberal societies or liberal capitalist societies are more likely to be more peaceful, right, with each other. And here the argument is that if I am doing business, right, with people from another country, they're my suppliers or they're my customers, I don't want war because war is very destructive. You know, if my supplier is in another country and I'm depending on him to produce or to send certain goods to me, well, I don't want his factory to be bombed because then I'm not going to get my goods and I'm not going to be able to make my money and so forth. So the trading networks that develop across national borders that are peaceful win-win trading networks are going to then be an incentive for people not to push for war under certain kinds of circumstances. And you can look at this argument historically. Most of the Western European nations, if you look at their history prior to the last 2 centuries, they're almost constantly, right, at war with each other, right? The French fighting the British, everybody fighting the Germans, right, Italians, right, and so forth. But to the extent that those societies made transitions to being more liberal capitalists, right, they don't fight wars, right, as much with it. When was the last time Britain and France went to war with each other? Well, it was almost 2 centuries ago. Prior to that, they were almost constantly at war. So what accounts for that significant change?